Alright, now buckle up, buckaroos, because this is the Tarantino level chaos that you did not learn about in school. What's good, y'all? It's your boy, Who Is Raphael Leraux, your resident rapper VTuber here, and today I want to introduce y'all to my new series where I artistically ramble on about different moments in history that I am currently hyperfixated on. And today we are talking about my hometown of El Paso, Texas, greatest spaghetti western style showdown. Alright, so look, El Paso, Texas, 1881, a town so rough that it is literally known as the gunslinger capital of the world, and home to one of the greatest cowboy ballads ever made, Marty Robinson's own El Paso. Today, we're talking about the 4 dead in 5 seconds gunfight. It's a title that's so creative that it could only really be rivaled by the likes of the Fast franchise. But no, this really happened, and it's somehow even dumber and bloodier than it sounds. Alright, so background time, right? Our story begins not with a bang, but with 2 missing Mexican vaqueros or cowboys. You see, they came across the border from Juarez, Mexico into Texas looking for their stolen cattle. Spoiler alert though, they found a whole lot more than their missing cattle. Now, the mutilated remains of their bodies were discovered near Johnny Hale's ranch, and while that name doesn't really sound too intimidating right now, at the time it would have struck fear in the hearts of the bravest men, because Johnny Hale was actually a notorious cattle rustler, so not exactly riding in the Mr. Rogers neighborhood here. And with this inciting incident, our main character of the story gets called in to help. El Paso's brand new town marshal, Dallas Stoudemire, quite possibly the most lawman sounding ass name that I have ever heard. Now, Dallas freaking Stoudemire here was a Civil War veteran, a former Texas Ranger, stood at 6'4", wore 2 guns on his hips, and fired like a man who did not believe in warning shots. He always hit his bullseye, even if it wasn't always in the right target, but we will touch on that a little bit later. You see, this guy didn't walk into town. He stormed and swaggered his way into town with the type of bravado and big old dick energy that you only see in spaghetti western movies. This man was basically just a mustache with a death wish. No, not that one. We'll get to him next time. Now, Stoudemire was officially made the town's marshal on April 11th. And now, it was April 14th, the day of the gunfight. Tensions were high. It's El Paso in the 1880s, so everybody is strapped. They all got the blicky on them, and nobody knows how to de-escalate a situation. You see, court had just adjourned in downtown El Paso, ruling on the case of the missing Mexican vaqueros, and Stoudemire was with Constable Gus Kremkow. Now, Kremkow went across the street to the saloon, while Stoudemire got dinner at the nearby Globe restaurant, which sounds kind of classy and fancy, but it had a lot more flies than it had customers back at that time. In the saloon, Constable Kremkow gets into a confrontation with former Marshal George Campbell, who has some issues with Kremkow's quote-unquote friendliness towards the Mexicans during this whole trial. The cattle rustler John Hale, who was also in the saloon, was absolutely shit-faced. He was gone. I'm talking just drunk off his ass, right? And in his infinite drunken wisdom, the unarmed Hale grabbed one of Campbell's pistols and shouted that he got his back. I don't really know what he was trying to do, but he started some shit. Immediately, he triggered a quick time event that Kremkow unfortunately failed miserably. So Dallas hears gunshots and leaps into action John Wick style. Now, Stoudemire enters the scene like the Kool-Aid Man with a 6-shooter in hand and fires one off at Campbell, completely missing. And you're probably thinking, but you said he always hits his bullseye, right? And I told you we would get back to this, homie. Stoudemire missed Campbell completely, but he did hit an innocent bystander named Ochoa right between the eyes. I'm talking just a perfect headshot. Just not really the right head. Now, Stoudemire fires again, and this time he hits Hale, who is hiding behind an adobe pillar, with another perfectly placed headshot right between the eyes. Bro legit had like a real life aimbot going on during this whole battle. Hale dropped faster than some Wi-Fi in a dust storm is all I'm saying. So now Campbell is out in the open with his hands up, pistol still gripped, standing right beside the body of his homie John Hale, and he shouts out this wasn't even his fight. Like he ain't starting nothing. You know, he was popping off at the mouth, but he had nothing to do with John grabbing his gun and shooting bro in the bar. And he possibly could have been spared too, which is the messed up part. But because El Paso just ain't a real place and this whole thing is ridiculous, Kremkow brings his half-dead ass outside and fires 2 shots at Campbell. The first shot hit his gun directly, shattering his hand with the impact. And then the second shot hit Campbell right in the foot, causing him to drop to the floor in agony. But Campbell knew he couldn't go out like a bitch, so he pushed through the pain, grabs his gun out the dirt with his left hand so he could defend himself, right? And like a scene straight out of a movie, Stoudemire spins back to face Campbell and put one final bullet directly in his ribs, sending Campbell down to the big rodeo in the sky. And the reports say that Stoudemire slowly and silently walked up to Campbell as he was dying on the ground and just stood over his body and looked at him. And Campbell's last words were, "You big son of a bitch, you murdered me." It was basically a speed run of a Tarantino movie, and keep in mind, this all took place right by the courthouse after a very heavy publicized case. There were tons of lawmen in the area just watching, including 3 Texas Rangers who went on to say that they didn't step in because, quote unquote, it looked like Stoudemire had it covered. And now you would think that the town would give Stoudemire a medal or at least some free whiskey or something for his efforts, right? I mean, he did step in and stop the whole thing. It turns out killing 3 people in broad daylight, including one dude who was totally innocent, didn't exactly win him a lot of friends. Especially considering the fact that bro had only been in town for a couple of days. Even in the gunslinger capital of the West, that just didn't slide. Also, Stoudemire was notoriously an unlikable dick. So, just 3 days later, on April 17th, James Manning, who was a friend of both Hale and Campbell, and who had previously been publicly humiliated by Stoudemire, decided enough was enough, and he recruited the former deputy Bill Johnson to assassinate Stoudemire. Now, after quite a bit of liquid courage, Johnson hid behind a comically precarious stack of bricks with a double-barrel shotgun, and you can already see where this is about to go. Drunk ass Johnson stumbles back, knocking over the bricks, causing him to accidentally squeeze the trigger, giving away his location. And see, the crazy thing is, the blast narrowly missed Stoudemire's head. And because the plot armor on this guy was just turned up to the max, Stoudemire turned back and fired 8 shots into Johnson's direction, and most disrespectful of which basically castrated Bill Johnson, causing him to quickly bleed to death. Now let that sink in real quick. This man turned around with the no-scope nut shot in less than a second after a shotgun shell went whizzing past his head. It's ridiculous. So now this kicks off a rivalry with James Manning that would follow Dallas Stoudemire for the rest of his life, which was like a few more months. You see, he got in a few duels and shootouts with basically every faction in town. Lawmen, criminals, it don't matter. Like I said, he was kind of an unlikable dick. He was so disliked in El Paso that the court actually tried to fire him as the town marshal. But in true Dallas Stoudemire fashion, that didn't really work out too well. Bro basically got drunk, walked into the council hall waving his pistol in the air and said, and I quote, "I can straddle every goddamn alderman on this council." and then he dared them to take his gun and his badge. Like, they legitimately told him he could keep his job. And then once he sobered up, he willingly resigned and took over ownership of the Globe restaurant, because why the hell not? Now, eventually, Stoudemire was ambushed and killed on September 18th, 1882, when an arranged peace meeting between him and James Manning went exactly how you would expect an arranged peace meeting between a man and the band who wanted to kill him would go. You see, they both showed up popping shit and insulting each other constantly. But James Manning left thinking that things were settled. And then his brother Doc, on the other hand, felt very differently. You see, both men eventually drew their pistols and fired at each other inside the bar. And Stoudemire's plot armor finally wore thin when a bystander tried to stop the fight by pushing both men as they pulled their triggers. Stoudemire was hit in the left arm by one shot, and the other barely grazed his skin because he had a stack of heavily folded papers right in his breast pocket. But that was enough to knock him out of the door and down onto the ground. And that was a moment where James Manning saw his opening, walked back up behind Dallas Stoudemire, and fired a bullet right behind Stoudemire's left ear, killing him and proving that even in the Wild West, karma lows fast. Now, the 4 dead in 5 seconds gunfight wasn't just fast, it was messy, it was impulsive, and it was driven by panic, liquor, and revenge. And it is forever cemented in El Paso history. Now, that's going to be all for this episode. I hope y'all enjoyed learning about this little slice of my hometown's history as much as I enjoyed telling you about it. Chop it up with me in the comments and let me know if this is something that you would like to see more of, because I would really like to bring my love of history over to this channel. So if you stuck around this long, thank y'all so much, and I hope y'all have a wonderful evening.
I got 2 platinum players on the wall, got a bag full of scars. I got stabbed in the jaw, but I'm still popping out. I tried to drown in the oil, they tried to force me in jars, but when the light came, they see they birthed a Molotov. The righteous ratchet, the balance of being tipping, actors grabbing on the ratchet to mess for their intentions, coming up in trenches, passionate being tempered, so I'm walking past my past and I'm passing my sins thinking.